Hello, I'm Donnell Carr with the Dr. Martin Luther King Association of Westville, New Jersey. You've just heard the last 6 minutes of a speech by Dr. Martin Luther King entitled, "Where do we go from here? Chaos or Community?" I'm at the Westfield Community Center with a distinguished group of local clergy members. They are Reverend Jeremy Jenkins, the pastor of the Presbyterian Church in Westville. Reverend Allison Phillip, the pastor of the First United Methodist Church in Westville. And Reverend Anthony Randazzo, the pastor of the Roman Catholic Church of the Holy Trinity in Westville. I want to thank each of you for being here. So, pastors, you have listened to the speech that Dr. King delivered in August of 1967 to the 11th Convention of the Southern Leadership Christian Council. You heard that you understand the context. And we've just heard the last 6 minutes of this speech. We're going to focus on those last 6 minutes. In the full context of the speech, Dr. King covers a lot. He pretty much covers the history of the Civil Rights Movement. So again, I welcome you to this part of our program. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to leave it open for discussion. And I'm going to start with this question. As pastors and leaders of the religious and spiritual components of our community, and having listened to the speech from this perspective of 54 years later, please share your thoughts, your level of satisfaction and dissatisfaction with the progress that has been made and needs to be made in achieving a community love for social and racial and economic justice are the practice standards. That's my first question for discussion, and I'll follow up with some more questions. So we'll start with who wants to start?
I can say a few words, and then maybe that my colleagues will have something to say. I think that's an excellent question that I've been sitting with since you asked us by email to be thinking about it. On the one hand, seeing the level of economic disparity that still exists over racial lines is extremely dissatisfying, and to read a speech or to listen to a speech from 54 years ago and see that we're still having that same conversation can feel disheartening. And so I appreciate the dissatisfaction that he names at the end of the speech, because I think it's a holy dissatisfaction that can move us toward continuing to do the work that we all share. I think it's a dissatisfaction that that's holy, that moves us, that it is God calling us to be the best we can be so that we honor the image of God in all people and keep doing the work. And at the same time, in the last 6 minutes of the speech, Dr. King says the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And I think it's the hope that that's true that keeps us moving. But we're not there. We're not there yet, and so the dissatisfaction can make sure that we're not comfortable enough to think that we're there when we're not.
I kind of follow up with a question for you specifically. You mentioned economics.
Yeah.
Disparity tied economics into the whole picture, right? And the current situation that we're in with jobs and so forth. One of the solutions that has been discussed, and I wonder what your opinion is on it, is the idea of having a guaranteed income for every person. Is that something that you think is doable?
I'm not an economist, so I I don't know if it's doable or not. I think in terms of the like policy standpoint, I think in terms of what we strive for as a human community, that's a Christian value for all people to have enough and that there is enough. And so we have choices about how we live into the belief that there's enough for everyone. That's my initial answer. I feel free for others to say what you think.
In light of what is being said about the economic disparity, work gives dignity, dignity is work. Thus, guaranteed income that's based on motivating people is essential to building a beloved community. Out of a good work ethic, a healthy work ethic, not necessarily an extremist work ethic, not an obsessive, addictive work ethic, but a healthy work ethic builds creativity. So that guaranteed income, yes, but at the same time, I want to see people's creativity coming through that. I don't think you just want to give people money without being creative, without somehow engaging their gifts, without somehow enabling them to be the best they can be, and therefore concretizing their dignity. Work gives dignity, dignity gives work.
I'll add, a living wage is important in terms of compensating the creativity.
Yes.
So yes.
Yes.
What I would say with the point of what we talk about with should, right? Should there be? I had a colleague back in Atlanta, Janelle Holmes. She's a pastor on the east side of Atlanta. It's not her phrase, but I learned it from her. She said, "Don't should all over yourself." And one of the things that we talk about is we can get trapped in the shoulds and forget to see that in order for us to have living wage, in order for us to have guaranteed income, we're actually talking about what the priorities of the nation would be. And for me, what that looks like right now is a stark reality of, I don't believe either are a reality with where we are right now as a nation. It simply points back to the gulf, the chasm, that lies in our society. I see the festering wound of white supremacy. And our culture is attached to every part of the conversation we're going to have. So if we are going to speak about dissatisfaction, a sacred dissatisfaction, I love the way you put that concept of the holy dissatisfaction. If we are going to speak as clergy in the spiritual realm of our country, talk about what it means to try to create a beloved community, there has to be trust. And frankly, people in my position have rarely earned the trust and done the hard work of creating trust relationships. We've not done the work of trying to cleanse that wound. We've not done the work of helping the members of our own congregations move beyond biases. We've not done the work. And as long as that chasm lies there, we can talk all day about dissatisfaction. What are we going to do about it? And in my own life, I shared with you earlier before we started this segment, but I hope not to take too much of the time, but the last few years have uncovered for me my own sense of privilege, in that I thought we were on a different track as a nation. And the events of the last several days have even further uncovered how absolutely wrong I have been about who I thought we were. The gulf is even bigger and wider than I ever thought possible. I don't like to speak of despair, but dissatisfaction, even at this moment, doesn't fully capture the feelings I have about where we are and where we need to be. I don't know.
Just want to pick up what you're saying, Jeremy, on feelings. The last 6 minutes of Dr. King's speech, I felt the speech. I was not just listening for content, but I was feeling it. It was coming through the screen. And in all that occurred yesterday, deeply emotional for all of us. Once again, as people say, it's not only we were watching, but the whole world was watching the unfolding yesterday at the Capitol. Yes, the emotional intelligence, which I think is fundamental to the changing of attitudes and the changing of policy and the changing of law. We need a lot of healing of wounded emotions. And the healing of wounded emotions is something done basically through trust. We have to regain and rebuild and reinitiate trustful, trusting, trustworthy relationships in order to aim at the beloved community, in order to somehow become what we hope can become a reality. We are becoming all the time. There's never a moment in history when people are not seeking ideals. There's the ideal and there's reality. And as we looked at the reality of yesterday, yes, we're not close to the ideals. We could talk the ideals very beautifully, and everyone yesterday was there, the senators, and everyone was talking the ideals. We know what the ideals are. At the same time, it does take a lot of work, as Allison mentions, on a local level.
Yeah.
Yes. And communicating with distinguished religious leaders like yourself, and political leaders, and economic leaders, and leaders in medicine. We've learned very distinctively through this period of pandemic that we need to be in dialogue with our leaders in science, our leaders in medicine. We cannot go ahead unless we engage, as Pope Francis has keenly been repeating to the world over and over again, creative dialogue, where I don't come with the truth in my pocket. I want to listen to your heart and to your thought and to your personal narrative. If we don't listen to the other person's personal narrative, then we really can't deepen our emotional intelligence.